Guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Tonight we're back here with Josh Scorcher. Tonight we got the top 10 underrated games from popular franchises, featuring Shaman. We actually did see him back in Nintendo fails, considering, like, you know, the honorable mention about the Nintendo presence in the Middle East. At least that's what I remember. So anyway, yeah, today these 10 games are pretty much underappreciated, considering the rest of the franchise games they come from. So, without any further ado, be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you guys enjoy it. Let's see these underappreciated games. Or underrated, you know what I mean. Also, tonight, using the right con, just thought I'd give them a try tonight. You know. Rude, Gino. Pretty sure I expect your game there. Here we go.
I'll see you in the sequel, which always does better than the original in the opening weekend, but is never as good as the original!
There are many games out there that go unloved and unappreciated. It'd be great to bring such underdogs to mention, but sadly, the subject as a whole is too broad. There are hundreds upon hundreds of buried games out there, and I don't think it's possible to make such a list work without being biased and uninclusive.
Well, why don't we narrow it down? You know, talk about the underdogs from franchises people know well of.
Who said that?
Me, I did.
What the shut
Your window's open again.
I have a front door!
You can find
Jeez, dude, a little
underappreciated
heads
gems
up next
everywhere,
time, huh?
and that does not exclude the IPs everyone's familiar with. There are plenty of franchises
Nice,
that,
Sly.
despite their recognition, inevitably have a few struggle installments that don't quite meet the acclaim. Whether it's overshadowed by better, more comforting titles, drew changes many people don't like, or came out in the wrong place at the wrong time.
As we
Sounds
rank
right.
these games, we'll be looking into three criteria: how good the game is, how unnoticed it is, and how popular its home franchise is. Any title ranging from sequels to spin-offs will qualify. As long as it's good, yet underpraised, it stands to find its chance here. Of course,
Shall we?
it doesn't hurt to go into detail over the aspects of the game that stand out, even compared to its more renowned relatives.
Now, treading familiar ground doesn't make the journey much easier. However, with my expertise on such fallen heroes, we're bound to shed the true underdogs some of the light that they deserve.
Wow, that sentence felt like it came from the heart.
Sure.
Let us commence forth.
Where'd you get that from? Oh. Alright, let's see these underrated games.
Now, Count, embrace the knowledge of all things Kingdom Hearts!
God damn
Alright,
it.
let me take my time with...
No, you're doing it now.
Hey, little warning! Break!
Anyone who's spent more than
Sorry,
5
happy done.
seconds on my channel knows I love
So,
Kingdom Hearts.
Some
by
say to an
sleep,
unhealthy
or-
degree. Anyway,
Where are we
we're
going
here
with
today to
this?
talk about a black sheep in the Kingdom Hearts franchise. Not that one.
No.
Not that one either.
No?
There you go.
Oh, Chain of Memories.
You take that back! On this channel, we do not slander Chain of Memories!
But you have to
Yeesh.
admit, it's a very strange game, right?
I mean,
Deck
true,
building in an
considering the
action
card
RPG.
battling aspect of
What
it.
game does that?
Mm,
Okay, you got me.
Despite its
Well,
less than
fair,
traditional
but
mechanics,
jeez.
I do not look down on this title. The gameplay is fun and brain-teasing, the plot is complex and interesting, and the plethora of viable decks is a blessing. The sleight system is ingenious, and the pixel art style is a joy to look at. My only complaint is that the game is maybe a little too easy to break. I'm looking at you, Raid Slights.
As a newbie looking in, I can say it was a bold choice to completely overhaul the gameplay and put the game on a completely separate system, the Game Boy Advance. The original Kingdom Hearts was an unexpected hit, and to be so willing to break the mold for the sequel takes a lot of guts.
Not a sequel. Well,
Eh.
you see, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories takes place before 2, but after 1, and also during the second
it's a
half of
sequel.
58
Oh,
Days
he's
over
focused.
2.
They keep going,
Going and
and
going
going and
and
going.
going.
Anyway, Count brings up a good point.
I did? Oh, I mean, of course I did.
Back in the days of the early 2000s, not everyone had access to every console, and the internet wasn't quite what it was today. Some people
True.
thought Chain of Memories was a spin-off and didn't bother with it. Others didn't have a Game Boy Advance, and some people just flat out didn't know of its existence.
I was
Ouch.
definitely in that last group. Heck, I didn't even
I'll be
know
honest,
Kingdom
too.
Hearts existed until I started watching Josh's videos. I just thought, hey, I get to beat up Disney villains. That's pretty cool.
So that's why Chain of Memories is on the list and not Re-Chain of Memories. Most folks know about Re-Chain of Memories and wrongly hate on it. The original Chain of Memories, on the other hand, barely even gets mentioned. Truly a sad state of affairs.
Is Re-Chain of Memories that bad? Again, I'll have to look this up. Like I said, I haven't played it.
You know what game I really enjoy? Crypt of the Necrodancer. I wish there was a sequel of some sort or expansion that twists up the gameplay in some way.
You know there was a Zelda spin-off, right?
Yeah, Cadence of Hyrule.
Oh, yeah, I almost forgot about that.
Well, I'm not
Haven't we all?
surprised since Hyrule Warriors is also a thing.
Warriors! I'm gonna play that!
Yeah.
Damn it, Josh.
Well, that
John,
intro pretty
on
much
you,
sums up
Persian.
Cadence of Hyrule. The game is a crossover spin-off / sequel of the popular indie game Crypt of the Necrodancer. It combines the rhythm-based gameplay of Necrodancer and uses it with characters, music, and settings from the Legend of Zelda series. Similar to its predecessor, this game is hard. It's a roguelike dungeon crawler that has procedurally generated maps for every save file and allows for little error.
The game had pretty good reviews. It even had DLC, which allowed for more playable characters and a new adventure starring Skull Kid.
Skull Kid.
Yeah, that's Skull Kid. It appeared on multiple Nintendo
normally.
Directs and was officially endorsed by them. But
So,
for some
what
reason,
happened?
no one really talks about this game. Yeah, I know it might be a bit too soon to say since the DLC just came out late last year, but have you heard anyone really talk about this game since then? Not really.
A few factors could be involved. For one, the game was a spin-off of an indie game. A popular one, yes, but one that is known for its difficulty and unique gameplay. So it could be non-appealing to most casual gamers and to Zelda fans who avoid Zelda 2 for the same reasons. But I think the main reason
Fair.
this game got shafted, and especially last year, was the inclusion of another crossover
Oh, yeah,
that was
Hyrule.
much more popular and accessible. Hyrule Warriors.
Age
Right,
of
Josh?
Calamity. Dude. Yeah, they're coming.
Cadence
Okay.
of Hyrule, despite being a great game with fun and unique gameplay, was
So, good
overlooked
game that
due
just
to its
came out at the
difficulty
wrong time.
and being overshadowed by other Zelda games. Not
Yep.
even Skull Kid could help it. But
Oof.
since it's a relatively new game, it is lower on the list.
Granted,
True.
you could be a wuss and play the game without turning on the rhythm, but really, who does that?
Eesh. Yeah, I'm good. Whew. Great.
You know it's bad when your spin-off overshadows your mainline entry.
A moment of silence for the buried ones.
After the original Nier
Nier.
became a surprise cult hit, the small but vocal fans were pumped about what would be next for the series. Well, Yoko Taro, in all his infinite wisdom, decided to make a prequel to the original game that Nier's a sequel to, Drakengard. A prequel that had very little to do with the story of the original and whose canon status was questionable. In other words, a Yoko Taro game.
While Nier is a game about a man trying to save his sister/daughter in a world falling apart, Drakengard
Okay.
3 is about a goddess committing a killing spree on her fellow sisters. Funny how that works. Reactions to the game were meh,
what?
to put it simply. While the soundtrack is still outstanding, most people who wanted a faithful Nier sequel were pretty put off with how different this game is. Which is a shame
Can't blame
because
'em.
looking past that, this is actually a pretty worthwhile experience.
While Nier Automata is widely regarded by many as the first game in the series with actual fun gameplay, I'd argue that Drakengard 3 was a big leap forward in getting there. The combat is far more fast-paced and frenetic. The weapon types have plenty of variety, and the flying segments are nice and varied. That being said, it's far from perfection. It's a bit on the easy side, most of the boss fights are a slog, and it's a bit lacking in polish. However, I'd honestly argue that Drakengard 3's more simplistic design makes it a good entry into the hack and slash genre for people who may be intimidated by the complexity of games like Devil May Cry.
Then we
Fair.
get to the story.
So a beginner-friendly
This is
one.
what will make or break the game for most people. But if you do like your fair share of dark humor, I say this is your ideal package. As the game starts, the first thing we see our hero do is kill the narrator.
No. Sorry. I tell the story, I'm not part of it.
From there, the insane
tell the
depravity
story,
only
I'm part of it.
continues to spiral. Like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the cast consists of horrible individuals, and the humor comes from seeing them be utter assholes to each other. Ditto
So
is
everyone's a
basically
prick.
Henry
Got
from
it.
Awakening if he went off the deep end. Decadus, if the name wasn't a hint enough, is the living embodiment of Harder Daddy. Octa's pretty much Master Roshi times infinity. Sense is the quip spitter, and Mikhail is like that child who got dragged into an illegal nightclub. It's wacky!
And the crown jewel of this rotten pile is Zero, a remorseless son who goes around murdering people without the story rambling over her lack of moral standing. She also has white hair and is voiced by Tara Platt, basically Edelgard if she doesn't pussy out on being a complete asshole. Zero is amazingly awful from start to finish, and having a protagonist like her sets the perfect tone for this super cynical game. Despite how messed up some of the characters are, the game still does have plenty of more emotional moments. In fact, I'd say they're more powerful here because of how much they contrast with everything else.
And there's a lot of talk about doing the nasty, and
fetish.
it's plot relevant. And believe it or not,
I wanna
it's actually
know.
kind of thought-provoking. 5 is an attractive abuser who's utterly loathed by the other characters. She puts her own disciple through hell and later gets what she deserves. 4 is a sexual Puritan who views the very act of intercourse as beneath her and shames others for the crime of doing so. Octa and Decadus, despite both of them being horn dogs on main 24/7, are 2 of the nicest characters in the game.
Between the primitive
isn't
gameplay and
saying
tongue-in-cheek
much.
story and humor, this isn't a game for everyone.
Also, no,
but
it's
anyone
called
thick enough to enjoy a game that crosses a few
Drakengard
lines
3.
here and there will certainly have a good time here. It's the breath of fresh air Drakengard is known for, with the updates that make it more enjoyable to play. Assuming that air isn't filled with Dragon's Musk.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, like I said, anyone else notice it's called Drakengard 3? Weird. What happened to 1 and 2? Or is there a 1 and 2? I don't know. Strange to say the least. Huh. I wonder why he did that. I guess we'll never know sometimes. Guess we'll never know. Huh. Strange start, I'll give you that. Also, Chain of Memories. Might have to try that out sometime, you know? I'm guessing with 3 Chain of Memories, I'm guessing the whole free-flowing of, like, the regular Kingdom Hearts did not match well with the cards. Or maybe they're just butthurt that they can't use some of their favorite decks. Like I said, can't tell because I never played it. So, let's get back to it.
You know, a lot of sequels need to have more creative subtitles. I mean, they're usually either revelations or echoes or...
I know, it's like these games live in an echo chamber.
Get out.
Has that ever worked?
Nobody gives me hope!
I definitely gotta tip my hat to the Metroid series. It really came a long way from just a Nintendo
Where are
cult
we
series
going
to a
with this?
company staple. A lot of that is thanks to the
Prime.
Prime trilogy. The original Metroid Prime brought the series to the plane.
That actually got remastered, luckily enough, which is out right now, so we'll get it.
Whether that's a good thing still varies, but what about that middle child?
I'm
The
glad
Echoes?
you asked. Out of the original Prime trilogy, poor Prime 2 Echoes is the one that gets glossed over. Partially
Really?
because, ironically, for plot reasons, it's still living in the shadow of its acclaimed predecessor.
It really didn't help that it came out during a time where the GameCube was kinda fading from the limelight. It's
Ouch.
also a bit harder than the first game, which could deter some gamers from giving it a chance.
Frickin' Torfus Bog, effing Boost Guardian and Chica! And yeah, let's be fair,
Boost
it also
Guardian
doesn't
and
feel as
Chica.
immersive as the other two, so it feels like it's gonna be a lackluster sequel. Until you get to the true sustenance.
Off the bat, you're treated to an amazing opening sequence. Samus was looking for a missing troop of soldiers. It has a very quiet, eerie feel as you look around and scan everything inside.
Have we done
They really put a heavy emphasis on
Whoa.
the environment here, which not only adds to the sense of loneliness, but also gives you a taste for other space cultures. Of course, don't expect the quiet to last for long, as you'll find yourself dragged into battle
Well,
against parasitic bugs and your own shadowy doppelganger.
Dark
Yep,
Samus.
they're following up on that cliffhanger from the first game. That's already some progress. There's a lot of subtle visual humanization moments for Samus, like right here. Just look at the way Samus looks at the dead soldiers after watching the log of what happened to them. No words, just her looking over the corpse of the dead soldier mournfully. There's a decent lot of heavy moments in media that don't need words to convey a story. We need more like those.
Amen to that. Speaking of improvements, while we still
Show, don't
lose
tell
some of our
sometimes.
abilities
It
and
helps.
have to do a smidge of exploring to get them back, at least we don't lose all of them. I hated that about the original Prime. Why the fuck would you give us all these abilities and just yoink them away?
At least it's not as bad as other M's.
You shut your mouth. I refuse to let that mess become a household name.
Fair,
Well, then
fair.
again, considering the times I ranted about it, it's probably already that.
Somebody has issues.
Anyways, there's also the
Thank you,
extra
Edna.
icing on the cake, such as the brain-tickling multi-dimensional puzzles, some of which get weaved into the boss fights, and a big first for the franchise, multiplayer. It's definitely fun and challenging, though admittedly feels a little out of place considering you spent the majority of the regular game alone and feeling isolated.
But hey, the menu screen sure loves to point it out, so that's gotta mean something. Overall, while it's easy to see how Echoes can get overlooked in favor of its older and younger siblings, it's still a fun, dynamic game that adds a little
one
zest
older, one
to the
younger.
franchise.
You get the idea, right? Number 6.
Alright, hands up and be honest now. Who knew that Dead Space had more than 3 games?
Yeah, that sounds about right. But yeah, along with the core 3 titles, the horror game franchise had 3 spin-off titles: Extraction, Ignition, and a mobile game simply named Dead Space. Great name, by the way. The mobile title is a fairly decent adaptation. And Ignition, we don't talk about Ignition. That comic book graphics and lousy gameplay, Dead Space Ignition was dead on arrival.
Sorry,
or
I'm done.
Ignition, I don't know.
Alright, I'm letting that one slide because it's too generous. Meanwhile, Extraction doesn't really get too much attention. The reviews were favorable, but
So
it's
an
just
on-rail
kinda
shooter.
there. This is sad because I actually have a bit of history with this game. My brother and I had a ton of fun playing this back in the day, which is kind of the main reason it's on here.
And who am I to judge?
personal
Even though
choice,
I don't
why
have
not?
as big a connection, I will say that I like the direction they decided to go with Extraction. Instead of the series' regular protagonist, we're focused on a new squad and see how they handle the necromorphs, which is a nice bit of world building, and unlike the other games in the series, this is an on-rails shooter, which I have quite the soft spot for.
You'd think that would limit things a bit since you don't get much freedom of mobility. Yeah, no. If anything, the guided experience increases the creep factor, especially when you have to go into the vents. The very vents that were built up in the last game to show how the monsters were getting around so quickly. It's unavoidable, it's utterly terrifying, it's claustrophobic, and my
Yeah, we're
brother
pretty much crawling
and
through
I
their nests.
loved it. It's kind of reminiscent of the House of the Dead on the arcade, only with slightly better voice acting.
My god. Unfortunately, it being a rail shooter and an M-rated title on the Wii kinda reduced its traffic. Not to mention it's not really a long game and it kinda just ends.
And let's be honest, the graphics aren't spectacular, but again, compared
Better
to
than
what?
Ignition.
But overlook that, and you still get a nice spooky sequel that
Well,
brings something
let it
new
be
to the
known.
franchise.
If the guys like on-rail shooters, here's a game for you.
So much.
And again, we actually do have a remake of that, so lucky us. In the future, at least. Sorry, Josh.
Oh boy, we're talking about Sonic.
What?
Hi, what's wrong with Sonic?
Really a bad thing?
Well, can a game really be overlooked if the main series game's quality goes up and down more than a GameStop stock?
Well, if the game is decent and overlooked, then...
Fighters? Where are we going?
Yeah?
The Sonic franchise has seen better days. Recently, the series has been trying really hard to find some sort of identity. They keep throwing stuff against the wall and hoping it sticks, but it really hasn't. I don't get that. All they need to do is
they
make
got a
Sonic
free-roam
into a
game.
snarky jerk and have him keep running fast. Can't I just have a game where he's always running, never stopping, and set in the world of Arabian Nights?
Why Arabian Nights?
What? I like the Aladdin TV show. Leave me alone.
Well, lucky for you, Josh,
Bad
because
boy.
Sonic and the Secret Rings
I
is a
was
thing
specific, but
that
here you go.
a
Secret
game
of
where
the
Sonic
Rings.
never stops running and sets in the world of Arabian Nights. Yeah, whoever thought it was a good idea to create a Sonic game in a world of 1001 Nights should get something. I don't know what, but give him a pat on the back for this weird concept.
Sonic was transported into the world of Arabian
Hey,
Nights after a
Shara?
genie named Shara asked him to help her fight
The Eraser
Genie
Gin.
of the Lamp. While there, Sonic is struck with an arrow of flame, and if he doesn't collect the 7 world rings, his
He's
life
dead.
will be forfeit. So Sonic goes to different worlds based on different stories from the Arabian Nights and finds these rings. The game acts as a rail platformer. Sonic is always running and doesn't stop. Using the Wii Remote, you need to time your jumps, move from side to side, and try to traverse these diverse worlds. Honestly,
I think
these
most
levels
people
look
really
great.
hated it
The
because of
music
the,
is amazing as
you know,
usual, and the gameplay,
controls.
while clunky at times, is still
See?
pretty fun. I don't know why this game gets so much hate.
Well, the storybook games aren't really favored to begin with. They are so different from previous Sonic games that a lot of people didn't really give them a second chance. Secret Rings in particular suffered from an awful release timing. Not only did it come out in the same year as Super Mario Galaxy, one of the best platformers of all time, but it came out the year after Sonic 06, one of the worst Sonic games and platformers of all time. So the opinion on
basically
Maurice the
this game
Porcupine
was
was at
his
an all-time
chance to,
low following
get
that
him-
train wreck. It doesn't help that Sega decided to delist the game from retailers only 3 years later to raise its brand by removing all subpar reviewed games.
Yeah, I guess the game didn't review all that well either. It was mixed at best, with a lot of people complaining about how sluggish it was to go backward and how difficult it was to get used to the controls. But despite that, I still enjoyed this game. Once you get used to the controls, the game is pretty fun and the worlds are varied and colorful. If they spent more time trying to solidify the gameplay, then it would have been a really solid Sonic game.
And let's be fair here. It's a lot better than That Which Shall Not Be Named. It belongs in a dumpster fire.
But Sonic 06 is always welcome.
If only. Yeesh. Anyway, number 4.
Final Fantasy. For many people, it is the definitive RPG franchise. It's been running for over 3 decades and has amassed an equally massive fan base. Just about every game in the series, spin-offs included, has its own devoted following. Heck, even the more divisive ones like 8 and 13 have their share of defenders.
With that said, you'll be hard-pressed to find a discussion about 2, let alone of a positive nature. Really? After the surprise success of the original Final Fantasy, you think that the sequel will be more of the same. Well, Square, as is typical of them, decided to do something completely different. While the visuals and music were familiar, everything else took a bit of a distant leap.
The story went from your typical collect the MacGuffins to defeat the big bad evil guy.
I've never heard that one before.
To a dark tale about war orphans caught up in a battle against a seemingly unstoppable empire. Several characters, including playable ones, died over the course of the game. Wow, par for the course by modern standards. Keep in mind that 2 originally came out on the NES. For the time, this was insane.
Of course, the story's backlash is small potatoes compared to the gameplay, specifically the character growth system. In another massive departure from the previous game and most RPGs in general, Final Fantasy II completely forewent character levels and experience points. Instead, you grow stronger based on the actions you took during combat. Casting magic improved your intelligence and MP, taking damage improved your HP, and so on. Unfortunately, this led to an exploit where the best way to power up was to repeatedly attack yourself. The game is pretty much broken as early as the first town. The overpowered spells didn't help much either.
So why are we defending this game when it's such a mess? Well, it's simple. When has Final Fantasy as a series ever been balanced? One thing I rarely see people acknowledge is that the games as a whole in this franchise are really easy. Heck, the challenge in half of them comes from not breaking the difficulty into tiny little itty-bitty bite-sized pieces. In the first few, this was understandable, as games with this many variables were unheard of. Unfortunately, the problem has persisted well into modern games. Whether it's monks in the original, ninjas in 3, augments in 4, half the stuff in 5, the entire Esper system of 6, enemy skills in 7, the entire junction system in 8,
several broken mechanics later,
or arithmetic and tactics, these games are far from balanced. Ironically enough, 13, in spite of all its flaws, is a surprisingly balanced entry. Meanwhile, Bravely Default and Second, while absolutely deserving of the praise they get, are chock full of exploits.
So because of that, we really feel that it's unfair to single out 2 for being broken when nearly every other game in the series is guilty of the same thing. Fortunately, Square Enix themselves actually do care about it. While 2 probably won't be getting any characters in Kingdom Hearts anytime soon, it's got plenty of ports, remasters, and crossover appearances.
Normally it's the fans that are begging a company to acknowledge an overlooked game, not the other way around.
I guess the company just really wants this game to work. Or at least that's how I'm seeing it, but as they say, I never know what people like. Kind of like Steve Jobs and his philosophy on the iPhone stuff, you know? Anyway, sorry, I was just checking to see my cable still like this. Anyway, so we're down to the final 3, so let's see what other underrated games were in popular franchises. Let's check it out. Surprised it doesn't like put the whole F-Zero like franchise in here.
Did you know that Awakening is not the first Fire Emblem game?
Say what?
Sorry, had to be done.
All joking aside, the Fire Emblem series did have a pretty steady following, even before it became more accessible to casual players. The GBA era in particular managed to draw a decent amount of traction, as well as a really big hacker base. But sadly, it didn't take long before the series found a dead end. By the time it finally transitioned to 3D, there's a steady decline in interest for Fire Emblem as a whole, No amount of exposure in Smash Bros. Did much to change how poorly the games began to sell. It's a dang shame because for all its kinks, the Radiant Saga deserved so much better.
Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn are some of Fire Emblem's earliest steps in taking the series formula to the next level. It's still got that strategy RPG gameplay covered, but with some mechanics that remain unique to these games even until now. They're the only games in the series to date to have the bonus EXP system, a feature that allows you to store EXP outside of battle to be spent later. It makes training up underleveled or support units that much easier and opens up a lot of potential to leveling up particular units into absolute behemoths.
Like that?
It's the first of the localized games to reintroduce the skill arrangement mechanic and utilize commands such as shoving and dismounting, which add varying layers of strategy to how you arrange your units on the map. You can tell how vital these features became when switching and shuffling them around becomes the norm for games like Fates and Three Houses.
Yeah,
the think of it. What is with this series and removing features just to add them back later anyway?
Because they gotta go easy on you casual simpletons.
Hey. Really? When was the last time you finished a pre-localized title, oh classic true fan?
To be safe, this series is home to the mechanization of the Lagoos, units capable of shifting into various beast forms of different fighting styles. We have here the standard beast Lagoos which specialize in land mobility, bird Lagoos conquering the air, and we can't forget our marching walls,
The dragon!
Radiant Dawn even specializes in the double promotion system, which adds even more numbers to the stats of already powerful promoted units. More so, it's fair play to the Path of Radiance units coming back and carrying the previous experiences.
Of course, for all its upsides, there's a reason these games struggled to catch on. Fundamental details like poor pacing and animations and fixed permadeath make the game difficult to get into for a lot of players, veterans and newcomers alike. The difficulty also, especially in Radiant Dawn, is crazy unbalanced, with some chapters lasting hardly a couple of turns while others requiring long, meticulous planning just to win without losing a unit. Doesn't help that the latter game even took out support conversations due to the number of units and characters they had to juggle around.
Seriously?
To boot, these games were released on GameCube and Wii. These were home consoles built for casual play. Games like Fire Emblem are pretty much outsiders to that kind of demographic.
But fret not, some games gain
I think
significant
nowadays they might be
redemption
more
via other
casual, but
aspects,
who
like the
knows?
story. The land of Telius is home to a lot of well-developed characters with their own personal arcs as well as respective villains that play to different forms of conflict.
Okay.
You know, instead of just being big bads that you have to slay, you think aggressive characters like Ike, Sanaki, Shion, Jill, and the plethora of hostile Lagoos characters in this game will get on your nerves. But they're written in a way that's so realistic and entertaining that you just can't hate them.
I gotta say, the overlying theme of xenophobia is done a lot better here than in some of the modern titles. Every faction between humans and Lagoos is given proper focus, and the way they treat each other is integrated into the story very well. On one hand, the Beast Tribe gives you a decent impression of how the humans rarely take the presence of Lagoos kindly, given how they struggle to give a good impression. On the other hand, the Raven and Hawk tribes are often seen as avaricious, and they themselves don't deny that. Yet still, they both find a common ground when they agree to save the endangered Heron tribe from the threat of purging and slavery. We even get to see in Radiant Dawn how much the relation between factions improves or regresses as a result of their respective influences. It makes the seemingly convoluted world building of Telius turn out so much more cohesive and believable.
These games really don't warrant holding the reputation of dragging the series down. The Radiant series offered a lot of foundation for a better Fire Emblem future.
True.
And it deserves the respect of every fan, classic or casual alike. Even if it's just the story, I wholeheartedly recommend the game just to experience the sheer scale of it all.
Or you could do what I did and just watch a playthrough on YouTube.
Hey, cheater! Oh, he's about to blow.
Wow, you got serious anger issues.
That's you. Yeesh. It's been an old man. Sorry, I had to be done.
There are few video game mascots with a pedigree
Mega
that
Man.
can match that of Mega Man. Say what you will about Capcom, but they know how to make things with staying power.
But speaking of Mega Man, we're here to talk about two of Capcom's forgotten sons, Omega Sis and Geostellar, who together make the Mega Man of Mega Man Star Force.
Oh,
Of
yeah.
all the Mega Man games, Star Force is
Strangely,
probably the one I
do
hear
remember
talked
this.
about the least.
In a way.
Mind you, I don't hear about Battle Network or Command Mission all that much either.
Sorry.
But Star Force is almost
Sorry,
treated
Command
like the
Mission,
red-headed
here it goes.
stepchild of the Mega Man family, and it honestly baffles me. though a large reason for this is the battle system.
A big portion of the disdain some people have for Star Force is that the battle system is a modified version of Battle Networks. It's essentially a simplified version of that, where you only move on a horizontal grid in a third-person view. It still has the complex deck-building gameplay, but it doesn't feel quite the same. I can only guess that after 6 games of Battle Network, people wanted something a bit fresher. I don't necessarily disagree, but you don't come to Star Force for the gameplay. You come to Star Force for the story.
Star Force's writing is downright legendary. Ironic considering it came from a franchise known for its force plus. It takes a departure from Battle Network's more casual storytelling and went for a grimmer but still charming narrative.
The characters pretty much developed from blatant archetypes to really nuanced and compelling people. We have Bud Bison. In any other game, he'd just be a typical bully, but in Star Force, he's a sensitive soul, though he seems thick-skinned. Ow. And by the third game, he even becomes one of the heroes alongside Mega Man, and his joy over getting to be just like his hero is so wholesome. And that's not all. We have Luna Platts, who starts out as a bossy and controlling brat, but is shown to be deeply caring in her own way. There's also Sonia Strum, a pop star who just wants to sing for her dead mother and doesn't care about the trappings of fame. And then we had the main man himself, Geo Stellar.
Geo is very much the key that holds the plot of Star Force together. His dad mysteriously vanished and was presumed dead a few years before the first game. We pretty much find him depressed at the start as a result. He has no friends and he does nothing except go outside at night to look at the stars, praying that one day his dad might return.
Life is pain. Life is only pain.
Protagonists like these can easily get on the nerves of a lot of people, since I know full well not everyone can get into mopey pessimists taking center stage. But really, Geo is a lot more realistic than that. As the game progresses, we see Geo start making friends. First through his unwilling alliance with Omega Sis, and then with Luna, Bud, Sonia, and more. His life that was so formerly dull and grey turns into something beautiful as Geo grows into the role of a hero magnificently with the help of his friends. Even at such an early age, Geo's take on depression is done in a way that inspires improvement. And the fact that he takes so many steps forward over it makes him a protagonist that everyone will love to root for.
The game itself isn't bad, it's just mechanically inferior. But the story gives so much incentive to want to keep playing regardless. Given how great these characters are, it's easy to want to care for their problems, especially when they're possessed by the constellations. You want to keep playing because you want to help these people. It's really surprising how a Mega Man game can evoke this much emotional gravitas when granting the drive to keep moving forward. Really amazing that this is from the same franchise. Star Force is often overlooked with unfavorable comparisons to Battle Network, but I've wholly proven that with a story and characters this fantastic, it definitely deserves a far more positive reputation than what it had.
Just be sure not to take a shortcut by watching the anime. Trust me, the justice ain't there.
Yeah, fair. I think I started with the games then anime, but
Bomberman 64, The Second Attack. Even though the franchise is well known, it's got a gallery of straggled titles, like this one with a very Final Fantasy-esque setting.
Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Almia. A game about drawing circles around Pokemon shouldn't be so awesome, but with great boss fights and colorful characters, it can.
Escape from Monkey Island, the Monkey Island franchise's first 3D game and LucasArts' final adventure game. I think people were put off trying to master monkey combat.
Castlevania Curse of Darkness. While it had solid controls and music, the atmosphere didn't really win over a lot of players compared to the franchise's other heavy hitters.
Guilty Gear Overture. Oof, the genre shift did not sit well with folks.
Some people just can't handle change.
Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. Well, that's one way to sell a Mortal Kombat game.
Pac-Man World 2. Camera's a little wonky, but that music? Sublime.
And the number one overrated game is...
Ah yes, the Mario RPG games. I don't know why a series that supposedly specializes in platformers somehow makes the greatest RPGs, but it does, and fortunately too. These games add so much more personality to the Mario franchise we all know and love, all the while offering so much substance in its gameplay that many stand out among other RPGs. Nearly all of these games can attract anyone who sires more character and world building from the franchise.
From the looks of it, there's enough Mario RPG games out there to the point where we inevitably got a few installments that lost their way in the quest for renown. Granted, some of them deserve it, but what about the ones that don't? The ones that still offer as much substance as the others, but were neglected for a few things they didn't get right. There's a couple that fall into the category, but we settled on the most relevant one.
Of course, we're talking about Mario and Luigi's Time Machine.
Bro.
It's Partners in Time, boss.
Oh.
Whoops.
Alright, they made them sound so similar.
That's right.
Partners in Time was the second game in the Mario and Luigi series that inherits the action-derived turn-based combat as par with its fellow titles. To briefly sum up what the game is about, the Mario brothers team up
Basically
with their
time
baby
travel
selves to
and
defeat
the
the evil
shrooms.
alien race known as the Shrooms from taking over the Mushroom Kingdom.
For those of you who have several questions, let's take it one step at a time.
Every Mario RPG introduces a peculiar theme that gives it an identity. Superstar Saga with bean aesthetics, Paper Mario with paper crafts, and Legend of the Seven Stars with fantasy-derived ecologies. This has... what else?
Time travel!
Let's go back in a time machine.
The game centers a lot of its world design based on the various locations around the Mushroom Kingdom of the past. It more or less explains how the baby counterparts in the Mario world came to be in the present time, as we see in many of those sports games.
Having the bros and the bebes fight together opens up additional commands like double hits and 4-player bros attacks. Now for those of you who question the ramifications of using literal infantry to solve dangerous situations,
Also, the
keep
X
in
and
mind
Y
that this is
thing,
a
that was
series
a little
where
rough
our
for
heroes
people,
get
to
away
be
with
honest.
vandalism, grave robbing, and drug dealing. Maybe don't dive too deep into it.
Oh, you like your frostings of darkness in your Mario games? Well, this one's story's got you covered. While
Alien
Super Paper
invasion.
Mario is a more philosophical and existential kind of dark, Partners in Time leans closer to monster horror. The Shroops are some of the most dangerous and terrifying villains in the franchise. These Martian mushes pose constant threats over multiple landscapes and conduct sheer abject torture over Toads, Yoshis, and many more of the citizenry across the Mushroom Kingdom. Really shows no matter where you go, you're never safe from mutant space fungi.
Dark stuff aside, the game has just as much charm and fun as the other titles of the series. With bright, fun visuals, a perky set of characters, and out-of-bounds humor, it's the exact personality we familiarize ourselves when it comes to these games. You know, baby pancakes notwithstanding. Also, can I just say that as someone whose heart is kind of cold steel, this game actually does have moments that got me really teary-eyed. Something even Super Paper Mario can't do. The game has some really heavy moments like Mario having to stand up for Luigi being judged for his heart, and baby Luigi foreshadowing the nature of the Cobalt Star. It's so poignant in how serious it is, especially when it's done with so little dialogue expressed by the bros themselves. And when the game gets sweet, I won't give too much away, but baby Mario is just the greatest past form a stalwart hero could ever ask for. He's just such a good boy, and it's so heartwarming to see him. Sorry,
You need a minute?
I got dirt in my eye. Hang on.
For all the wonderful stuff this game brought to the table, it didn't get a lot of accolades. Critics liked the game and gave it outstanding scores, but fans were
Not the
somewhat
fans, though.
torn over the whole package. And a lot of it came down to how complicated the gameplay can get. Bros moves being stockable items shifts the pace of battles dramatically, and some enemies do tend to have way more HP than needed. If you can look past those, however, these problems are merely small bumps that can be adjusted to in time. Using Bros moves without having to recover Bros points can encourage rapid and creative ways to take down tougher enemies. Besides, stocking up on these items isn't all that hard with all the money the game generously pours at you.
It's a tragedy that a game this good is not only forgotten by the fans, but it didn't even meet enough demands for a remake despite deserving it the most. And depressingly, it will never happen given Alpha Dream's turbulence. Still, it's never too late to give this game the long-lost attention it craves. People have come to value Super Paper Mario for its unique perks, so why not this game? It's still part of the golden age of Mario RPGs and deserves to be looked upon the same way as its brethren. If you still have rough opinions on the game's quality, we recommend giving the game another shot. Perhaps there will be something in the game that will win it back its spotlight somewhere near the future.
I'm the Fiery Joker.
And I'm Count Shaman.
And, oh look, it's Monday! And the cleaning lady left her stuff.
Ain't no fair! I'm not a pest!
That's one way to take
That taken care of. I need to get started putting better locks on my windows.
And a new vacuum too.
Uh-oh. Run!
Wow, shut.
Whoops. I guess that's what you get for messing with the count there. Whoopsie. Anyway, there you go. And honestly, yeah, with Star Force and Partners of Time, that I could see. What do you guys think? Agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, like, subscribe for more. See ya.